Dricus du Plessis walked out of UFC 319 without the middleweight title, but not without dignity. For 25 minutes, the South African slugger went head-to-head with Khamzat Chimaev, in a fight that was billed as one of the most stylistically fascinating matchups the division had seen in years. Many observers wondered if du Plessis, known for his late-round grit and ability to overwhelm opponents with unorthodox pressure, could weather Chimaev's blistering opening pace and perhaps flip the script as the minutes wore on. Instead, the night unfolded differently. Chimaev never slowed, never let the fight leave his terms, and smothered the defending champion with suffocating grappling from the opening bell until the final horn. After the unanimous decision was announced, du Plessis spoke with Joe Rogan inside the cage, giving full credit to his opponent's performance. He described Chimaev's top control as unlike anything he'd ever experienced, comparing it to being trapped under a weighted blanket that anticipated his every movement. Du Plessis emphasized that the dominance wasn't just about raw strength or brute force. It was about timing, positioning, and the uncanny ability of Chimaev to stay one step ahead in every scramble. At one point, du Plessis believed he had his chance when he secured back control and could, quote, almost taste victory, but the opportunity slipped away as Chimaev calmly reversed position and resumed control. In the eyes of the South African, Chimaev didn't simply win on athleticism, but on technical mastery and execution of a perfect game plan. Despite the setback, du Plessis made it clear that the loss was not the end of his story, but rather a detour. He was gracious in defeat, acknowledging Chimaev as the rightful champion and declaring that the Chechen star 100% deserved the belt on that night. But he also reminded fans and the UFC brass that he has been here before, written off, doubted, and forced to claw his way back. The defeat marked his first since 2018, snapping an impressive 11-fight winning streak that had carried him to the pinnacle of the sport. Far from discouraged, du Plessis vowed to regroup, rebuild, and return stronger, declaring with confidence that he would become a two-time UFC middleweight champion in the future. For Chimaev, the victory pushed his record to a flawless 15-0, solidifying the hype that has followed him since his arrival. For du Plessis, the fight was a reminder that even in loss, champions can show the resilience, humility, and determination that define greatness. He left the T-Mobile Arena without his belt, but with a renewed fire, promising that his story in the UFC middleweight division is far from finished. Dana White has made it crystal clear that the UFC will not be relying on Jon Jones to help anchor the promotion's historic White House event. Despite Jones' undeniable legacy as one of the greatest fighters of all time, the UFC CEO expressed major doubts about trusting him to deliver when it counts. Over the last several years, Jones has spent more time making headlines for injuries, abrupt changes in career plans, and outside-the-cage drama than for actually competing inside the octagon. What was once an unstoppable reign has turned into a long stretch of uncertainty that has left fans frustrated and the UFC hesitant to build around him. When Jones vacated the heavyweight title, rather than facing interim champion Tom Aspinall in a unification bout, his future looked more unclear than ever. Instead of cementing his legacy against the dangerous new wave of heavyweights, Jones opted to fight the aging Stipe Miocic in what was billed as Miocic's retirement bout at UFC 309. Following that fight, Jones teased his own retirement only to reverse course months later, leaving both fans and the promotion in limbo. Now, with the UFC planning one of the most high-profile events in its history at the White House, Jones has suddenly expressed renewed interest in returning, but Dana White isn't buying into the idea. Speaking at a post-fight press conference, White was asked directly about the chances of Jones competing on the card. His response was blunt. "Let me ask you, what do you think Jon would do in the next couple of months that would make me trust putting him on the White House card?" White then doubled down with an even sharper dismissal. "Yeah, I would not. If I had to make odds, it's 1,000,000,000 to 1 that I put Jon Jones on the White House card." That statement underlines the extent of White's skepticism, highlighting how unreliable Jones has become in his eyes. The contrast with Conor McGregor is striking. While McGregor has had his own share of setbacks, White has consistently backed the Irishman and praised his history of showing up to fight whenever he was booked, barring serious injury. With Jones, though, the UFC has been burned too many times before. His track record of sudden withdrawals, long layoffs, and dramatic career pivots makes it nearly impossible for the promotion to invest the kind of trust required for a showcase event of this magnitude. Jones may still be considered one of the greatest fighters to ever step into the cage, but his unpredictability continues to overshadow his accomplishments. For fans hoping to see him headline a massive comeback fight on the White House stage, White's comments serve as a sobering reality check. Unless Jones proves he can commit and follow through in the near future, the UFC's biggest spotlight will shine elsewhere. Lerone Murphy's stock just skyrocketed, and now it looks like the Brit might finally get his long-awaited crack at UFC Gold. Fresh off his jaw-dropping spinning elbow knockout over Aaron Pico in the co-main event of UFC 319, Murphy wasted no time in embracing Alexander Volkanovski's call-out for a featherweight title showdown in December. It was the kind of finish that turns heads across the MMA world, a brutal highlight reel moment that instantly cemented his place among the elite at 145 pounds. For Volkanovski, who has spent years fending off some of the division's most dangerous contenders, Murphy represents both a fresh challenge and a dangerous stylistic puzzle. The Aussie has built his legacy by taking on all comers, from Max Holloway to Yair Rodriguez to Islam Makhachev, and his willingness to target Murphy just hours after the knockout showed both respect and interest in keeping his reign active and relevant. The great knows that the fight game waits for no one, and matching up with a surging finisher like Murphy would inject new life into the featherweight division. Murphy, meanwhile, has been quietly but steadily building one of the most impressive resumes in the division. Undefeated in 10 UFC appearances with 9 wins and just 1 draw, he has consistently delivered, but many felt he was still searching for that one definitive moment to break into the title conversation. That came at UFC 319. Not only did he dispatch a highly regarded prospect in Pico, but he did so in devastating fashion on a massive stage. Now, with Volkanovski himself putting his name on the table, the timing feels perfect. Speaking at his post-fight press conference, Murphy didn't shy away from the magnitude of the potential clash. He laid out December as the ideal timeline, citing the need to recharge, regroup, and make further improvements before stepping back into the cage. But more than anything, he made it clear he relishes the chance to share the octagon with a legend. Calling Volkanovski one of the featherweight GOATs, Murphy acknowledged the respect he has for the champ while also making it known that he sees himself as next in line to wear the belt. "I've had 10 fights in the UFC now, 1 draw, 9 wins. It's time for a title fight," Murphy said with conviction. And with his trademark confidence, he promised to bring chaos, if and when the fight materializes. "I think it'll be a barn burner. I think it'll be a great fight. I'll push the pace in that fight, and I'll look for the finish again." The ingredients are all there. A dominant champion who's never backed down from a challenge, and a surging contender with an aura of danger and momentum at his back. If the UFC does book Volkanovski versus Murphy for December, fans could be looking at one of the most compelling featherweight clashes in years. UFC 319 was supposed to be a showcase, and in some ways, it was Khamzat Chimaev steamrolled Dricus du Plessis to claim the middleweight crown in Chicago and extend his unbeaten run to 15-0. But while Boris proved himself the better man without question, the fight itself left much to be desired. For 25 minutes, Chimaev relied almost exclusively on his grappling, shooting for takedowns almost instantly at the start of each round, and smothering du Plessis on the mat. It was dominant, but not dynamic. The challenger never really opened up for a finish, and the referee was forced multiple times to stand the fighters back up due to inactivity. Fans voiced their displeasure with boos that echoed around the United Center, a jarring soundtrack for what should have been a celebratory crowning moment. The most telling sign of the night's main event fatigue didn't come from the crowd, however, but from UFC President Dana White himself. Midway through the fight, press row reporter Zane Bando caught White scrolling on his phone, seemingly checked out of the action unfolding in the cage. Bando posted the photo online with the caption, quote, "Dana White is bored on his phone during the fight of the year." The image quickly spread, with many fans chiming in to agree with White's apparent disinterest. "He's all of us," one reply joked. Another quipped, "I've seen better fights in my local pub." Others lamented the dull pace of the title bout but praised the undercard, which had delivered violent knockouts and dramatic finishes earlier in the evening. Yet despite the lukewarm reception, White himself was glowing in his post-fight remarks about Chimaev. Wrapping the belt around the new champion, he applauded the sheer control on display, even if the fight lacked fireworks. "The lead up to this fight, I said, I bet the main event is the fight of the night. I didn't see that coming, but not shocked either," White admitted. "The way he dominated, if he could do it in the first round, you're more likely going to do it the second and throughout the rest of the fight." He then pointed back to Chimaev's meteoric rise since his breakout during the UFC's Fight Island run, when he famously offered to fight on back-to-back weekends. Ever since then, the guy has been a rocket ship. He's obviously very popular, people love him, and fighting back here in the United States, Chicago loves him too. So while the spectacle may not have lived up to the hype inside the cage, Chimaev still left with UFC gold and White's endorsement. The chatter around White's mid-fight distraction, however, only fueled criticism of the main event's pace and style. On a night that featured stunning knockouts from Lerone Murphy and Carlos Prates, plus highlight reel finishes up and down the card, the headliner ironically became the least talked about fight. Save, of course, for the image of the UFC boss scrolling through his phone as his new champion was grinding out history. Khamzat Chimaev has officially claimed his place on top of the UFC middleweight mountain, capturing his first UFC championship in decisive fashion at UFC 319. In the build-up to the fight, many analysts and fans alike openly questioned whether his gas tank could hold up in a grueling 5-round affair. Chimaev's reputation for blistering starts had often been paired with concerns about what might happen if his early dominance didn't immediately secure a finish. Against Dricus du Plessis, those doubts were silenced. For 25 minutes, Chimaev smothered the South African champion with relentless grappling, chaining takedowns together, riding top position, and never allowing du Plessis to find the kind of striking rhythm that has made him such a dangerous finisher. The result was a unanimous decision win that crowned Boers as the new king of the 185-pound division, 5 years after his whirlwind arrival in the UFC. The road here was far from smooth. After bursting onto the scene in 2020 with record-breaking dominance in his first 2 octagon appearances, Chimaev seemed destined for stardom in record time. But illness, injuries, and travel complications repeatedly delayed his rise, leaving fans frustrated and Chimaev sidelined for long stretches. At UFC 319, however, everything finally came together. The same suffocating wrestling and pressure that overwhelmed his early opponents proved just as effective against an established champion, and Chimaev now holds the validation he has been chasing: UFC gold. His undefeated record in the promotion remains intact, and his aura of menace has only grown stronger. Not everyone was impressed, though. Middleweight contender Anthony "Fluffy" Hernandez wasted no time in voicing his thoughts. While offering congratulations, Hernandez bluntly dismissed the title fight as boring and declared himself the man who can solve Chimaev's puzzle. Riding an 8-fight winning streak capped by a submission victory over Roman Dolidze, Hernandez insisted that his own grappling and jiu-jitsu arsenal, combined with a bottomless gas tank, make him uniquely equipped to neutralize Chimaev's grinding style. Hernandez confidently claimed he would drown Chimaev if they shared the cage, promising a pace and intensity that the new champion has yet to face. His comments drew attention because Hernandez has developed a reputation as a fighter who can push hard into the later rounds, and he has shown an ability to finish opponents when they begin to fade. The middleweight picture is filled with intrigue, and Hernandez isn't the only name in the mix. Reinier de Ridder scored a major win over Robert Whittaker, a result that immediately elevated him into title conversations. His grappling-heavy game and championship experience outside the UFC make him another stylistic test for Chimaev, one that fans would no doubt be curious to see. Beyond that, Nassourdine Imavov and Caio Borralho are set to square off in the main event of UFC Paris, a fight that could easily produce the next in line. Both men are younger, dynamic, and steadily building their resumes, and the winner will almost certainly be placed within striking distance of a title shot. For Chimaev, the spotlight has never been brighter. As UFC middleweight champion, every contender in the division now has him in their crosshairs, each convinced they have the style to expose weaknesses that, to this point, have not been exploited. Yet UFC 319 showed that Chimaev is far more than just an early-round wrecking ball. He proved he can fight disciplined, strategic and conditioned over 5 full rounds, a vital step for any long-reigning champion. Whether it's Hernandez, De Ridder, or the next wave from UFC Paris, Chimaev's reign will be tested quickly. But for now, the Chechen-born fighter stands atop the division, carrying both the weight of expectation and the undeniable aura of a man who just conquered one of the UFC's toughest champions. The UFC's debut in Chicago at UFC 319 was packed with chaos, and one of the most talked about storylines coming out of it had less to do with the champions and more to do with the way new arrivals are being handled by the promotion. Aaron Pico's long-awaited UFC debut ended in disaster, as he was brutally knocked out by Lerone Murphy in the co-main event just hours before Khamzat Chimaev captured the middleweight crown from Dricus du Plessis. The finish, a spinning elbow that left Pico out cold, was devastating, and it immediately sparked debate about whether the UFC had deliberately set him up for failure. Former UFC heavyweight Zach Pauga didn't hold back his theory. Posting on X before Pico's fight even ended, Pauga suggested that Dana White and company were intentionally booking fighters from the Bellator PFL Rizin pipeline into matchups designed to expose them. In his words, the UFC brass wanted to flex on rival promotions by throwing their champions and prospects straight into shark-infested waters against elite, ranked competition. In Pico's case, he was matched with the undefeated Murphy, who was already riding a 9-fight unbeaten UFC streak and positioned as a rising contender at 145. The result was predictable in Pauga's eyes, a sink-or-swim booking that felt more like a punishment than an opportunity. The pattern is difficult to ignore. Pitbull was fed to Yair Rodriguez at UFC 314 and lost decisively. Patchy Mix, another high-profile acquisition, was dominated by Mario Bautista at UFC 316. Pico, once billed as Bellator's crown jewel, met a similar fate at UFC 319. And just as Pauga pointed out, the night's opener featured another cautionary tale, as ex-risen bantamweight king Kai Asakura was choked out by Tim Elliott, dropping to 0-2 in the octagon after failing to dethrone Alexandre Pantoja in his December debut. Each time, the UFC's matchmaking has pitted newcomers against seasoned top-tier names, often leading to brutal reality checks. Fans quickly latched onto Pauga's observation, echoing his sentiment across social platforms. "Makes sense," one fan wrote, while another commented, "You can see Dana smile every time one of them loses." The consensus from many was that the UFC seems intent on reminding the world where the sport's deepest roster truly resides. While some argued it was simply tough matchmaking and a matter of proving worth at the highest level, others viewed it as a calculated strategy by White to diminish the value of fighters arriving from rival promotions. For Pico, the setback was crushing. His move from Bellator to the UFC was supposed to represent the next chapter of his career, but instead, his debut became a nightmare highlight for Lerone Murphy, who now appears to be lined up for a title shot against Alex Volkanovski in December. Meanwhile, the larger conversation lingers. Are these debut tests legitimate opportunities for fighters to prove themselves? Or are they showcases for the UFC to reinforce its dominance at the expense of new signings? What's clear is that UFC 319 didn't just crown a new champion in Chimaev. It also reignited the ongoing debate about Dana White's matchmaking philosophy and whether fighters from outside the promotion are being set up to fail the moment they walk through the octagon doors. The Professional Fighters League will host a major championship event in Dubai on October 3rd at the Coca-Cola Arena. Titled PFL Champions Series, Road to Dubai, the rematch, The card features 2 title fights, highlighted by Usman Nurmagomedov vs Paul Hughes and Corey Anderson vs Dovlet Yagshimuradov. Undefeated lightweight champion Usman Nurmagomedov will defend his title against Paul Hughes, who previously lost a close decision to Nurmagomedov in January. Hughes returned in May with a 42-second knockout over Bruno Miranda and has called for the rematch. Known for his technical control, Nurmagomedov has notable wins over Patricky Pitbull and Benson Henderson, and will look to reaffirm his dominance in one of MMA's most competitive divisions. Former Bellator light heavyweight champion Corey Anderson faces PFL light heavyweight champion Dovlet Yagshimuradov in a rematch of their 2021 Bellator encounter, which Anderson won by third-round stoppage. Anderson has since added the Bellator title and a win over 2024 PFL heavyweight champion Denis Goltsov, while Yagshimuradov has gone unbeaten in 7 fights, capturing the PFL light heavyweight belt against Impa Kasanganay. The undercard includes an undefeated heavyweight clash between Puya Ramani and Slim Trabelsi, a long-delayed 165-pound bout between Zubaira Tukhugov and Artem Lobov, and a welterweight fight featuring 2024 PFL MENA champion Omar El Dafraoui versus PFL Europe champion Florim Zendelli, with both entering unbeaten. The event is part of the PFL's Road to Dubai initiative, run with the Dubai Sports Council and Dubai Department of Economy and Tourism, culminating in the Road to Dubai finale in January 2025. PFL CEO John Martin highlighted the significance of hosting 2 championship fights in Dubai, underscoring the city's rise as a global MMA hub and the PFL's role in delivering top-tier competition.